Welcome back to the Coin Zone, powered by Liquid Loans. I'm your host, Paul Matt. Joining me for today's episode, guys, is co-founder of Liquid Loans, Cristian Ulloa. You probably know Cristian for his work as a prominent CEO, a builder, an investor of over 20 years, and a longtime leader of international and national consulting teams. So stick around to the end, guys. You don't want to miss Cristian's unfiltered take about where he thinks we're going in the future and why he's all in right now. So first question right off the bat, Cristian, just elephant in the room. Things look a little different here on the channel with Liquid Loans and now the Coin Zone as well. So can you just kind of address, what's the situation here with the rebrand?
Yeah, look, it's a very simple one from our point of view. I think obviously we're both Dave and I are very much community members of PulseChain, and we'll continue to do everything we need to do to make sure that what we launch on PulseChain is successful. But we also feel that there is a need to expand and to bring in others from outside of the current community. And so the Coin Zone was intended primarily to help us to reach a much broader audience. And that audience isn't necessarily in DeFi, it's also TradFi, right? So we can see ourselves sort of reaching a more traditional finance audience as well. So whilst we're always committed to PulseChain, we want to make sure that more people hear about not just PulseChain, but also what we're offering.
Cool. And then I know you kind of addressed it already, but in regards to the coinzone.com, is this, same old, everything the returning viewers are going to be used to with the channel, or, are we still going to be talking about Pulse Chain? So what direction are we kind of taking it here?
Yeah, well, obviously they're going to meet you, Paul. So you're definitely going to be a big participant in that space. But I think what you're going to see is certainly we'll be talking very much about our existing projects, but we want to sort of expand this into more of the traditional finance to try and bring some of those folks in. So the reality is, I remember I attended a conference recently. It was a crypto conference, and it was almost a stark contrast between the community or the people that were attending the conference and how the conference was presenting itself to that community. It felt to me like there was a bit of a disconnect. And I think what's needing to happen is that there is a more mature audience that are wanting to sort of invest in crypto, but they need to be handheld a little bit. And I think part of that is, look, I've got a few grey hairs, so it's easy for me to engage with that audience. But they're the ones that need a little bit more hand holding, and we need to speak to them differently, and we need to present ourselves a little bit differently to that audience. And I think for us, that's the intent, that we're heading in that direction. So absolutely bringing in that audience, delivering messages that not just about crypto, but how do you bring people in from traditional finance thinking into more DeFi related projects?
Gotcha. Yeah, totally understand that too. Obviously, you would want people to understand liquid loans, the benefits that they can get there, and also just understand Pulse Chain as well. But before they get into that, you have to make sure that they understand the basics as well and that they're getting into this space as safely as
That's
possible.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. I think
So,
that's probably a big hurdle for crypto in general, is the fact that there is that, and Paul, you would have experienced this yourself, I'm sure. But when you first start out, it's like, what the hell is a wallet? What's a seed phrase? Like all of those things that now we take for granted. But when you first start this journey, it can be quite a blocker. So we need to get past some of that stuff, and I think helping people along that journey, especially at the very beginning, will actually reap benefits for the broader community.
so Christian, obviously, we're recording right after one of Pulse Chain's biggest conferences, the PLS 369. And Liquid Loans was actually not just any sponsor, but a platinum sponsor. So walk me through it, what it feels like from your perspective, from Dave's perspective, as being a top sponsor at a Pulse Chain event.
Yeah, look, it was from our point of view, it was a bit of a no-brainer, and but at the time, I remember it was RG3 reached out to me and said, "Listen, is this something of interest?" Spoke with Scottish Dave as well, and the other thing that I really value about RG3 is, and particularly his team, I think, they're striving to really improve and engage with a much broader audience. And I think that was the other thing that caught my attention, is that they want to be positioning PulseChain in a much more professional light. And I really, really think that's the way to go. And from our point of view, that's what we're trying to achieve as well. So there are some commonalities there, no doubt. And we were pleased as punch to be able to be the main sponsor, and really happy with the way that's turned out.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the resiliency of these chains. When you look at how strong the community is, you can also look at there's been zero downtime with PulseChain, with liquid loans. There's never been, any issues during the bear market where normally some people could see a lot of issues and the future of the chain goes up into question. But right now we've seen a lot of resiliency. Why do you think that is with PulseChain and with liquid loans?
I think it comes down to one thing for me, Paul, and that is community. I mean, the PulseChain community is a very strong community. So, I know Richard has a lot of detractors, but if you go back to some of his earlier content, Richard went above and beyond in my book in terms of trying to educate people, not just in Hex, but just in general, just to help people protect their wealth, protect them from scammers. It was a very educational focus that Richard had at the very beginning. And whilst obviously as he developed Hex and communicated that to the broader community, the underlying issue for Richard is, hey, this is about self-sovereignty. And I think he engages so well with the community that he's been able to build. And that's what's kept the community going, is I think in his absence, the underlying principles that Richard sort of espouses is what's actually kept the community going. And when you see, individuals and the amount of content that they're producing, such as RG3, such as Somi, such as KDP, there's a whole range of content providers that continue to espouse all of Richard's teachings. And I think that's why it's such a strong community, is because of that. So.
Agreed. In regards to liquid loans too, just kind of shifting gears a little bit, I'm definitely eager to talk about a couple things just in regards to 2024, some of the stats, and just moving forward into the future, 2025 and beyond. So, we've heard a lot of metrics, one being 29% of the PLS that's locked up, liquid loans is responsible for. These are not small numbers. So, as someone who's building out this protocol and this ecosystem on PulseChain, what are the metrics that you look for, that personally speak to you that you want to create as a builder?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I do like metrics, and I do like the data side of things, but I think there's some fundamental things that people need to understand about liquid loans and our ethos is probably the one that, if anything, I reflect and I think, oh, I wish we had have been a little bit more explicit. But our ethos is never selling, right? That's the underpinning of liquid loans, never selling. And the fundamental reason for that is that you don't want to sell an appreciating asset. You want to hang on to it for as long as you possibly can. And that's how people build wealth. And so part of that process is to make sure that, hey, we don't want people selling Pulse or PLS. We want them to hang on to their PLS. And if they need to extract value, do so in a very conservative way. But at least you're not selling an appreciating asset, right? So that was the motivation there. But there's another side to that. And the other side to it is, hey, there's also the loan token. And the loan token is a yield bearing token, right? So it generates yield. And so that's another token that you don't want to be selling. And, again, whilst we know that prices for both PLS and loan have not been where we'd all like them to be, the fundamental issue is you don't want to sell either of them, right? And the reason that you don't want to sell is because you don't want, for PLS, you never want to be selling that for two reasons. One is it's an appreciating asset. That's the first thing. But also you want to be avoiding any potential taxable event. So if as soon as you sell an asset, typically in most jurisdictions, there's a taxable event that occurs, and then you potentially are subject to tax in your local jurisdiction. And so that's not a good outcome. So you don't want to be in that situation. And possibly the worst outcome is you do all of that, you pay your taxes, and the price of the asset that you just sold goes through the roof. It's like, it's just not it's not a win-win at all. It's an awful situation to be in. So you never do that. You never sell. And the analogy that I give people that aren't familiar with DeFi is to say, well, if you're wanting to buy a brand new car, you're not going to sell your house to buy the car. You're going to borrow against the house. Why? Because the house is where you live. That's the main reason, possibly. but also potentially the value of that house will continue to go up. And so the last thing you want to be doing is selling your house to buy a car. But you can extract and then pay off the loan and Bob's your uncle, basically. Then you've got the car and the house and you haven't had to sell anything and there's been no taxable event. But coming back to the ethos of never selling was absolutely aimed at you never want to sell Pulse. But at the same time, it was you never want to sell loan. And the reason for that is, and this is what I think it's been a little bit lost for some of the community members, is that the loan token, when you stake your loan token, the yield is not paid in loan, right? You're not getting more loan token just by locking it up. You're actually potentially getting more Pulse. So you're getting more Pulse and potentially getting some USDL along the way. But fundamentally, what you're doing is you're acquiring more Pulse by staking your loan token. So why would you want to sell something that's generating yield in an asset that you do want to hang on to as well, and that's your PLS? So for me, our underlying ethos is to never sell, and hopefully that makes it a bit clearer as to why we never expected or wanted people to be selling either loan token or PLS, and we wanted the protocol to help people to extract value, but to do so in a conservative way, right? So, and look, the reality is some people are, their level of risk is taking is much higher, and they're quite happy to go close to the margins. But that was the ethos. Never sell, not just Pulse, but never sell your loan token either. So hopefully that makes sense, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk more about this new token just launched, this brand new project. So a lot to talk about, Christian. I know we were talking beforehand, a lot to be excited about right now. So tell us what the big deal is and tell us what the PulseChain community could be excited to look forward to.
Yeah, look, we're super excited. This has taken a fair while to get here, but and there's been a number of reasons for that. But we're really, really super excited about the fact that we've just released Fetch. So Fetch Oracle is actually now live and available on PulseChain. And from last count, I think it's doing extremely well. There's a whole bunch of reporters coming into the system. So we're super excited about that for the community. And yeah, it's just a feel good factor. And I think I actually made a comment to the team this morning. One of the things that, despite the fact that, look, we are launching a new project on PulseChain. It's not the only one, but it's the newest one. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the effort that the guys have gone to, and that's both in the development side and the marketing side, to actually pull this together. So, and I think the comment that I made to the team was along the lines of, guys, I'm super proud and I'm super happy that we've come together as a team to be able to deploy this for the community. And it's, part of the motivation, and certainly I think I can speak for Scottish Dave on this as well, and that is that part of the motivation is we want to build something of value, and we're doing that as a legacy for, that's something that we want to do, but for our children, but also as a team, it'd be nice for them to reflect and say, hey, we were part of all of that. It's what an exciting journey. And, the team have done extraordinarily well to pull all this together. It's taken a little bit longer than what we'd hoped. We had to go through a few little tweaks and changes to the existing Tell-All project that we forked. There was a few changes that we had to make. But fundamentally, the biggest issue with oracles in general, I believe, is it's almost like a mystery for most people in terms of how do they actually work and how can you participate. And so we had to spend a lot of time building a really expansive front end that actually helps people to understand how it actually all works and comes together. So you'll notice that, when people start looking at Fetch, there's so much content, so many videos, just to help people understand how an oracle works, how they can actually participate. And so, there's a terminology called a reporter. That's someone that provides the information. So all of that is quite detailed, but the front end actually does a fantastic job of explaining how it all comes together. And hopefully a lot more people can actually participate in what traditionally would be seen as, largely dev land, it's almost like being a validator. It's like, oh my goodness, you have to be a super intelligent dev to be able to run a validator. Or at least that's the perception. And whilst it is a complex process, We didn't want that. We wanted people to really understand, hey, I can report and I can do that, and I can do that through adapt. And if I understand this, it's actually a good thing, not just for me, but for the community in general, by supporting other projects that may need feeds from whether it's on blockchain or off blockchain, that this information can be brought into PulseChain. So super excited. I know I've gone into a bit of detail there, but it's super excited for what we've been able to build and deploy.
So who's the target audience for Fetch? So for the audience listening right now, can they use Fetch? And
Yeah,
moreover, why should they?
yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. Well, I think there's a couple of issues, and people need to understand the fundamentals of what the hell is an oracle anyway. So one of the biggest challenges that every blockchain has to deal with is getting information, right? So how do you get information that people can use in a blockchain in a reliable way so that it's not potentially compromised? So a blockchain doesn't have data, so you've got to feed it. Now, the data can come from within the blockchain itself. So, for example, a price for a particular token is something that happens on chain. But if you have a single point providing you that, so for example, if you're pulling that information from one particular DEX, that could be compromised. If the DEX goes down or if there's an issue with that, all of a sudden you no longer have that information coming through. So the whole idea of an oracle is to provide some redundancy, and basically it's a decentralized oracle that says, hey, I want the price for PLS. I can go straight to a DEX such as PulseX and pull that price from a liquidity pool. Fantastic. But what happens if that pool's manipulated? What happens if the DEX goes down? All of a sudden, you no longer have that feed of information. So the whole idea of an oracle is to say, hey, community, if you need this information, there's a whole bunch of folk out there that are happy to provide it and do so in a secure way so that the information coming through can be from multiple sources that we refer to as reporters, but they may be pulling the data from multiple DEXs or multiple liquidity pools. So all of a sudden, you've got a decentralized mechanism that collects information in a decentralized way and does that in a method that enables security for the information. So you're always going to get that information. But more importantly, if there's anything nefarious, if somebody provides a dodgy bit of info, the community can actually dispute that. And there's a process and a mechanism that enables that. So it's a much better way of providing consistent information that is provided to you in a decentralized way, and the community self-polices it, right? So that's the first thing. So that's information that exists within the blockchain itself. But sometimes people want information from outside. So you might want the price of a stock, for example, or you might want the price of the euro, or there could be a whole multiple reasons why you need that information. But you need that information in a decentralized way and a way that you can manage well. Again, you can use a reporter to do that. So there could be a whole bunch of needs for it, but that's the intent of an oracle, is to enable you to get information reliably, either within the blockchain or from outside the blockchain. And that's what it does. So for us, we've developed something that enables anyone in the community to participate. So you don't have to have, technical nous in terms of how to set up a computer system, etc., to be able to do that. You can actually just use the protocol, use the front end to provide reports if you would like to participate in that way. And there are incentives for people that want to do that. So from that point of view, we're pretty proud of what we've been able to achieve. And I think once you get past the understanding what the hell an oracle is, and you start using the DApp, it becomes apparent that, hey, there's complexity here. It's a really good thing that I'm doing for myself as an individual investor, but more importantly, it's a really good benefit to the community more broadly.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the average crypto person who's been in this for a little bit now, I'm sure understands oracles and knows some of the top ones like Chainlink, for example. We just saw Sergey over at the White House recently. I mean, it kind of leads me into my next question too. It's just want to talk about big picture. You're a big picture guy, and I feel like these products that you've been developing is because you have that big picture longevity mindset. You're thinking about things down the road. What are we going to need in the meantime? So it's really cool to see you're building out those products, having that long-term vision, obviously thinking, well, during the roadmap, things need to be done before we get from point A to point B, and you got to build it. So that's cool. But, you know, you're the bigger picture guy. Dave, tackles other things for liquid loans. But talk to me about having that longevity mindset. Is that just natural for you, or did you kind of build this as your career and, traditional finance and into blockchain just kind of went about?
Yeah, I think I look. The reality is that whilst I enjoy detail, it's not my like. I don't dwell on the detail. I dwell on I like to think more about, okay, how can this work? How can we add value? What are the other things that we can actually do to really improve the way things are operating within crypto in general? And I think for me, the journey has to be, it just has to be, we need to bring more people into crypto. And unfortunately, when I take a step back, I think there's so much rubbish and junk out there, right? And I also think that, and when I say that, what I'm referring to specifically is people are pandering to, I believe, the speculative side of crypto. And I'm like, look, I get it. And I can't say that I haven't participated in that, because I certainly have. But it's not really what's going to attract people in the future, right? Speculation on all those things is, yeah, look, you need to kind of be aware of that. But for me, it's like, what adds value? What can we bring from the traditional finance world into DeFi? What makes sense to bring over? And I think the biggest hurdle that we're all going to face in the future is, the monetary system that we're currently operating under is broken. There's obviously, if you follow some of the geopolitical stuff that's out there at the moment, it does feel like that's changing or going to change. We're kind of hoping that doesn't happen all overnight, but it may well do. And so there's a hell of a lot of things that are happening that leads me to think crypto is going to be part of that. And what we need to start to embrace is, we need to remove um, the speculators, or at least the speculative side of crypto, or the stuff that generally hits the headlines as some scam that's happened, and it puts fear into people that may not be familiar with crypto. And unfortunately, I believe that's the biggest hurdle, is to get past all of that. And once people become more familiar with concepts like DeFi, and feel comfortable and safe within a crypto environment, I think that's the next step. Is how do we make sure that crypto is demystified for people? We enable them to participate a lot easier than what it is at the very beginning now. As soon as we get past that, I think it will start to blossom, and there'll be so much innovation that will come in. But at the moment, I think that's the biggest hurdle. We're going to go see a monetary change of some description. I'm not clear exactly how that's going to plan out. But what I am clear on is, crypto will be part of the solution. And if it is part of the solution, we've got to make it easier for the broader community that perhaps sees it as a little bit scammy, or, there's something quite not right about crypto. That's got to go. We've got to be able to reach that audience. And you're only going to do that if you're presenting what you're doing in a more professional way. So do it in a professional manner. Do it the way that the broader TradFi community tends to engage in, and that's how you'll bring people on board. And I think that's, to me, the future is crypto. How much it gets to participate, I think, will be largely driven by people realizing that, to onboard people that may not currently be in crypto, that's the hurdle we've got to get past. We've got to get past that. We've got to demystify it. We've got to get rid of all the nonsense that tends to happen, or at least reduce it as much as we can, and enable people to participate, and do so in a very safe environment, where self custody is very much a big part of the forefront, but do it in a safe, constructive way, and get rid of the nonsense.
Great. And then last question for you, Christian, just to wrap it up here. And this could be broad or general, or it can be PulseChain specific. But what's just the number one thing exciting you right now in the crypto space?
What's exciting me is that that the scamminess of crypto is starting to sort of fade. The fact that you've had the President Donald Trump make announcements around the sovereign wealth fund, make announcements about having Bitcoin, etc., being part of that. it's starting to remove that terrible aura that crypto has had. And that's exciting for me because it says, okay, the next step is to help people understand, and there's going to be a re-education of folk, and potentially that's going to spell more people participating, more people being aware, and I think that's pretty exciting. And it will be a shift towards a much more decentralized way of maintaining wealth. So yeah, excited about that mostly, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree too. I think certain people and maybe some newcomers as well are starting to realize maybe the best play here are finding real utility projects. So I
Yeah,
think that's where the
agree.
money's going to start flowing back into. But yeah, Christian, thanks for joining us today and for your time. I know you, the entire Liquid Loans team, is just busy working tirelessly, making a lot happen. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us and for giving us your time. Any last words or any last comments you want to leave us with?
No, just thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate having the opportunity of talking to you about these topics today. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you everybody for watching, for joining. Make sure to go like, subscribe, share the video with your friends, your parents, anybody. Make sure we get the word out there. Once again, I'm your host, Paul Matt. This is the Coin Zone. And we'll see you guys for another episode. Take care.